college, I started playing a lot on Unix machines that were, in Wisney, understood the vision and ultimately led to us doing a deal with them. I had many influences growing up, things like Ultima to Might and Magic to Wizardry, and so I started designing Diablo when I was in high school, and then in college I started playing a lot on Unix machines that were, in the computer lab at the time. They didn't have really any kind of graphics associated with them, and that was really where I got introduced to things like MUDs and roguelike games, even though the term roguelike comes from games that are like the game Rogue, which is one of the games that I was playing at the time. And then there were others like NetHack and Moria, Moria and Angband, and those were huge influences. And really, in a lot of ways, it was Angband. I think that was kind of the model of what we wanted. The point, in a lot of ways, it was Angband. I think that was kind of huge influences. And really, in a lot of ways, it was Angband. I think that was kind of the model of what we wanted. The point of the game was just, killed a boss, and there was random levels and random items, but you were the @ symbol attacking the letter K. There was a game, NHL 94. You were the @ symbol attacking the letter K. There was a game, NHL 94. One of the things that we loved about that game is that with just a few quick buttons, we were in and skating around and could check each other and things like that. And that was the kind of philosophy that we wanted to bring to Diablo. We wanted to be everything that RPGs weren't, and one of those things was we want to just press a few buttons and get right into the game. Character creation was this big deal in RPGs. You would end up answering a bunch of questions about your history and giving yourself a backstory and putting numbers into all sorts of stats before you even knew what the stats would do. So we wanted to bypass all of that and get directly in, and that philosophy permeated every decision that we made. Time from boot up to kill was like it's got to be under a minute kind of thing. For Diablo, there were a lot of technical things that we had to overcome that were different than the way that games had been at the time. So the loot lottery is kind of a system by which random items are generated. And the best analogy is it's a slot machine. Every time you kill a monster, you put a quarter into the slot machine and you pull the lever and out can come nothing. You get your quarterback. You could do pretty well or you could hit a jackpot. And so if you can think of pulling the lever as every time you kill a monster, it's got kind of this addictive quality. Just as slot machines are addictive, so is the I am going to maybe win something big here. It was kind of loosely based on the system that came from kind of Moria, Angband, Moria, those kind of style games. They had random item generation, but not to the same extent that we were going to be doing it in Diablo. Luckily, this was a really fun part of the game for a lot of us, and so we didn't mind working on this part. It meant that we got to play the game and get cool stuff. Random level generation in Diablo was extremely complicated. There were like 4 kind of subsections of the original game. There were like kind of 4 different tile sets, but also it was having to write basically 4 times the code that you normally would write for one of these things. Also made it kind of a big challenge. One of our pillars was your guy that you've made, your character that you've made is unique. Your experience is going to be different than anybody else's forever. Just because of the way the trillions of combinations that exist out there, nobody will have the same experience twice. A lot of RPGs were like, oh, we've got 100 hours and things like that of content. And we were saying, basically, you have unlimited content here. One of the things that we wanted to do with Diablo was multi-classing. This was kind of a philosophy that was again, kind of anti-typical RPG. RPGs at the time were things like, oh, you're playing as a cleric, and as a cleric, I can't hold a sword. It didn't make any sense at all that a person who claims to be this cleric can't just actually pick up a dagger or pick up a sword. They could only use maces. And so, in a lot of ways, we wanted to make the anti-system for that, which was this kind of like multi-classing or everybody can do everything kind of system. So, as a warrior, you could cast spells. You may be a lot worse at it. It may take you extra mana. Your spell casting animations are longer, but you could do it. It was this system where you could make any class you wanted. There were no restrictions like so many of the other things that we thought were just barriers to fun.
Fresh meat.
And so making it so that it was kind of this free form was really important to us. And again, it was more of the anti-RPG at the time.
The spirits of the dead are now avenged.
The relationship between Blizzard North and Blizzard South was sometimes contentious, as any two groups can be or whatever in any relationship. Largely, we got along really well, as any two groups in Blizzard North and Blizzard South was sometimes contentious, as any two groups can be or whatever in any relationship. Largely, we got along really well. We were very reasonable with each other. We helped each other out. Obviously, there were some fights, some things that they felt passionately about, some things that we felt passionately about. They were involved, but they weren't involved in a day-to-day basis. We would talk often, but it wasn't like they were sitting in our office like with a producer talking, talking about what we're doing every day kind of thing. Originally, Diablo was going to be a turn-based game, which is based on the Rogue and Angband, etc. All those games were turn-based. At some point during the process, which was pretty early, I would say within maybe 3 or 4 months of the start of the project, they came to us after their success with converting strategy games to real-time in the same way that they did with Warcraft. And they felt, hey, with all of these kind of turn-based way that their success with converting strategy games to real-time in the same way that they did with Warcraft. And they felt, hey, with all of these kind of turn-based old-school versions of RPGs, we should do a real-time version of it. And I was really against this idea. This was the line in the sand for me. I was not gonna, there was no way that I was changing this game to real-time.
His reckless overconfidence has proven costly to us all.
I was deathly afraid of losing what I thought was kind of the essence of this game. Oftentimes when you're playing these turn-based RPGs like this, you get to a point where your character's about to die. There were important decisions you had to make. There was just so much strategy and depth, and the games were permadeath, so if you died, that was it. And they was on these Unix servers, so you couldn't like restore your characters or anything like that. It was gone. So it was this really tense moment. I really did not want to lose that tension. I thought that was essential to the way that the game was going to play. And our turn base wasn't really like our turn, their turn, our turn, their turn. It was a little bit more complicated. It was if a single turn was broken into 10 sub-turns or something like that. Pulling out your sword may take like, 1/10 of a turn, and then walking one square horizontally took a whole turn, but diagonally took 1.4 turns. So we kind of had this scaling list, so it was kind of a complicated turn-based thing. And there was a lot of conflict, and a lot of times that we would talk about the game and how things were going, and we would have phone calls, and for weeks at the end they would say, hey, so what about changing it to real time? They would kind of keep nudging on this. I brought it up with some of the people at the office. It started to gain some momentum. People were like, yeah, no, I think that it might be kind of cool.
My knowledge of the ancient ways might be of some help.
We all got together, the entire Blizzard North got together in the kitchen and had a vote. The development team was probably maybe 15 people at the time. We all voted, and I was heavily outweighed. There were, a few, 3 or 4 of us kind of didn't want to change it, but it was 15 of them did want to change it or whatever. So reluctantly I said, okay, yeah, we can do this. We can give it a try. I think this is dumb. I think it's going to be a waste of, it's going to take us a month to do this. We've done this game for too cheap. we're going to go back, we're going to try and get some more money as well at the same time. I went back, I said, yeah, it's going to take us longer to develop the game now because it's going to be this real-time thing. So we not only need an extra milestone payment, but also, we're not going to have anything to show or talk about for like a month because it's just going to take so long to do this. And so I said, okay, I'm going to start this process. Everybody go home. This was on a Friday. Everybody cleared out. And Friday afternoon, I started working on it. And by Friday evening, I had it done. I remember it just like it was yesterday. I was working on it and I was kind of the warrior. I had this club in my hand. There was a skeleton on the screen and I kind of clicked on the skeleton. My character walked over and swung and smacked the skeleton apart. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. That felt so good. That was really, this is way better. The sun shone through the window, the clouds parted, the angels, went, oh, kind of, it was definitely a moment that I knew that this was definitely the way to go. This was way better.
Думаете, что инвестиции в акции и облигации это очень сложно? А я учу уделять этому всего пару часов в месяц и получать больше.
And I just sat there for like an hour, like clicking the mouse button over and over again as I just swung the sword, and we never really looked back. So when people came in on Monday morning, it was done, it was working, it was obvious that this was the way to go, and we never looked back. One of the great things about this change was that we had so many assets to work with. The game itself was already deep in production. We already had a bunch of different assets, so we didn't need to start from scratch. We kept the same perspective, we kept a lot of the assets that we had, so there wasn't really any kind of fundamental technology changes in terms of the graphics pipeline or art assets or anything like that we needed to take care of. It was mainly focused on our ability to change the gameplay and make sure that was a smooth transition. Once the real-time change happened and kind of settled in, it was pretty obvious that it was the right decision. Throughout the office, it was kind of an electric atmosphere. Everybody was really jazzed, everybody's really psyched. Even the people that were atmosphere, everybody was really jazzed, everybody's really psyched.
Ну что вот эта штучка желтая? А что такое? Это яз горит. И что он там делать, я не знаю, но это причина.
Psyched. Even the people that were kind of steadfast against this, including myself, came to me and said, yes, this feels amazing. This is really cool. We kind of changed some of the design of the game and the way that you're going to interact with the monsters and the way that you're going to do combat and stuff like that. And these things kind of evolved and changed over a period of the next few weeks and months as we kind of grasp what the real time really meant and how that affected the actual moment-to-moment gameplay. So on that day that I had that incredible encoding session, we didn't let Blizzard know quite right away, but I couldn't hold it back that much. I couldn't withhold that information for too long because it was just so damn exciting. And they had already agreed to hold it on that day that a few weeks and months as we kind of grasp what the real time really meant and how that affected the actual moment-to-moment gameplay. So on that day that I had that incredible encoding session, we didn't let Blizzard know quite right away, but I couldn't hold it back that much. I couldn't withhold that information for too long because it was just so damn exciting. And they had already agreed to pay us more money, so that part was taken care of. And the fact that it took such a short time and was such an improvement and they kind of got their way, it ended up not really being an issue at all. And everybody was very excited about the new direction and the way that it turned out.
We have learned strength is making the right choice.
Looking back, I feel like Diablo 1 turned out way better than I ever imagined it would. I'm obviously very proud of working on it. It's just such a highlight and a pillar of my career. But it wasn't just me, it was a lot of people. There are a lot of people, very talented people that I worked with that made that a reality. From music to graphics to other programmers, etc. There were just so many super talented people that worked together as a team to make that a just really special time. In terms of my overall vision, it it exceeded what my vision of what the final product could be. So I feel very, very lucky to have worked on it. We had a very different vision for Diablo 2. We had a lot more experience about what we were doing. We understood the market a lot better. We understood that we were building upon this fantastic game. With Diablo 2, it was definitely more in lines with my expectations. Even, it still exceeded my expectations and still does today. I mean, the fact of the matter is that there are so many people playing the game today that, 20 years after we released it, says a lot about the product. You can go onto Twitch and find people streaming the product at any time. It continued to sell, a box copy of this game on Target for 15 years after the product was released. It was always in the top 10 sellers of the year. At the time, Diablo 2 was the fastest selling PC game of all time. It reached 1 million copies faster than any other game in history. And I think that Diablo 1, sold 1 million very quickly as well. Right at the exact same time, The Sims came out. It's almost the exact same time as Diablo 2. Those two games were on the best-selling list and still are on the best-selling list of all time if you look up PC sales. People are so passionate about the game and they figure out every little aspect, and it's funny, they'll collect every single unique item in the game or something like that, and they play literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours trying to collect these things. They do it in unique ways. So I'm not going to use any kind of weapons. I'm just going to punch my way to the end or whatever. There's like all sorts of different ways that people come up with. They make videos on YouTube and all these kind of things, and it's really great to see people so passionate about the game after all these years. Both Diablo and Diablo 2 had such a huge impact on my career and still do to today. It's strange having such success with your first PC game you've ever made. The expectations for everything that you do after that are just sky high, ridiculously high. That was a tough thing to deal with when we left Blizzard and made things like Hellgate London, and the hype for that game was outrageously high and didn't meet expectations. It was a really unique game. It was really cool. I think it was a game that was way ahead of its time. Basically, it was the very first looter shooter that, I don't know, some people call it shooter looter, some people call it looter shooter, there are other names for it or whatever, but whatever way that you want to say it, it was the first of that style of game, and I get a lot of people that come back and compliment me on that all the time, despite the flaws, which were mainly bug related. There are a lot of gameplay loops that despite the flaws, which were mainly bug related. There are a lot of gameplay loops that I'm fond of these days. I think that for me, a lot of kind of like survival-esque games are really kind of my jam lately. I was really into MMOs for a while, and I think that any kind of survival building, crafting, those kind of things, I really enjoy that a lot. But still, I harken back to ARPGs. Like I still really enjoy the loop of kill monsters, get loot. I still really love that the most, much more than almost any other genre. The best general advice that I can give are things like, from a UI perspective, can somebody play this without reading a manual or getting any kind of instructions? Like back in the early days when we were making Diablo, we had this thing, which is now kind of unfair, but it was nicknamed the mom test, which was like, my mom was not computer savvy at the time, and so like if my mom can pick this up and play this, then anybody can. We wanted to approach the thing so it was kind of a wide audience kind of way to play the game, and it made simplified things. It forced us to simplify any UI, and so kind of distilling the essence of what you're trying to do, whatever it is, and making the UI kind of enhance that is the best kind of experience that I can give. Making sure that something is really simple and straightforward, especially in your core game loop, is critical. A few years ago, I went completely independent. I made a company called Graybeard Games. It was originally just me, still largely just me. Made a product called It Lurks Below. I did everything. I did the pixel art, the programming, the design, music. Later in the game, a couple other people helped. My wife is doing a little bit of programming and design, and my third eldest kid, but my eldest kid here still at the house, she's doing some of the art. We've done some of the pixel art, and I've got some other friends helping me and stuff like that, so it's more than just me. But originally, a great majority of the project has been just me. I wanted to try and do a project all by myself, and It Lurks Below, it's out. It's been out for about a year, and it's coming to Xbox soon, and hopefully other platforms, other consoles after that. And then recently, I also just started a publisher called Skystone Games, and looking to publish other kind of indie products and take my experience from being an indie developer and trying to boost other indies and making sure that they can survive in today's harsh climate. Give them not only game feedback, but also make sure that they can get good coverage on their game and get seen by press outlets and things like that. There were a bunch of times during development that I felt like this could be a hit, but the thing that really drove it home for me, while we were making the game, we would work and people would roll in and work all day, and then when it was time to go home, they weren't going home, they were playing the game that they had just spent all day working on. So I knew when that was happening that it could be something that was kind of addictive. The dream was never that it would do as well as it did. Our dream was maybe someday we can sell 25,000 copies. If we did that, maybe we could make a sequel. That was kind of the original dream. I had no real intent in making it, that it was going to be so addictive, or that wasn't really what we had set out to be. It was just the hopes of us being able to make the PC games that we love.
When Nintendo debuted this footage of the remake of the '93 classic A Link's Awakening earlier this year, something awoke in the dormant, frozen heart of this aging millennial.
Критикует, да? Критикует. Нормально играет он, значит, да. Нет, о себе он так думает. Нормально играет, значит, да! Будь проклят, блин! Будь проклят! Играй нормально тогда. играй, да. Бурады. Бурады, да. Что? Он просто понимает, наверное. То есть как бы оно не бывает иначе, понимаете? По себе говорю просто. Ну это просто вранье. Согласен, да? То есть, как бы, ну, ты понимаешь, это по себе, ну вот это мне типа, да, ну просто надо жить, просто вот как бы что-то делать на себе, не то же самое же, никто не будет отвечать ни за что, естественно. Просто, естественно, да. Понятно. в подвале сидишь, что Вот это гипсон сам я не брежу. Нет, тихо. 0, 1. Чесноконная, чиполо, чиполь, что такое? Такая штука делаем, когда... Нет, да, шагусь. Make my day. Technologies. Tech. Arinka high tech. Technologies make my nose. Наоборот, sometimes. С тех пор еще иногда sometimes early thinking как. Сегодня я тоже надо я пианист.
Though much as I'm ready to buy into this glossy anime bobblehead Toy Story look, which is of course simply an evolution of the camera shots in the original game, there's something about the rough pixely simplicity of 93's Awakening that I will always love. Whilst Nintendo moved further from their 8 and 16-bit aesthetic origins to glossy 3D, increasing hordes of indie devs are returning to the nostalgic simplicity of pixel artwork. But why? Is it purely a nostalgic cash grab? Perhaps a cost-cutting technique? Or could it actually be an artistic choice that will continue to blossom in its own right? Because for the generation younger than me, who grew up in the likes of Super Mario Galaxy and Halo 3, pixel art is some dusty relic of an ancient past before they were born, like VHS tapes, Blockbuster Video, and dial-up internet. Yet pixel art prevails. So I'm going to check out why, I'm going to look at innovative uses of the form, and at what makes it so timeless. Let's begin by looking at Hyperlight Drifter. It has this unique, saturated
что это даст? Чем можно добавить? Тебя бы, слушай, я-то здесь пришел, все, а что, ну такой вот это делать? А, ну вот это. Не раздражало. Да какая разница, если ты видео снимаешь, там, ну вот это есть на самом деле. А, тогда можно, я наоборот. В чем проблема-то? Чтобы я слушал здесь, я не рад. Играть надо себя надо брать. Ну на себе так говорит, ну вот нет. Что
Привет, я тут Утрон, я помогаю человеческим существам выполнять свои обещания. Обещайте себе начать копить.
So remember back to my first video where I said that I was too cool for 3D engines or languages classes and garbage collection, namespaces and things we don't really need? Yeah, well, I've thought some more about it since then, and I've humbled a bit and decided I'm just too good for operating systems at this point too. My beautifully handcrafted artisan code shall only grace the CPU if it's supported entirely by my own software. So naturally, I've made an entire operating system. But just to run Tetris. And yeah, I know what you're probably thinking here. Isn't this the guy I subscribe to because he's making video games? Well, yeah, but honestly, when I came up with the idea for this project, I just kind of had to throw my main one on the back burner because this was too good to wait. And just as a little preface for this video, it would be hours long if I tried to go into depth on absolutely everything, so I'll link some resources down in the description if you want to learn more. But with that out of the way, let's get to it. Now, normally I would start off by cracking open my IDE, slapping down a printf hello world, compiling and running to test that everything works. But without an OS to even start with, we're kind of in the wild west of computing here. No operating system, nothing that can load an executable file. Actually, the only thing we have is the BIOS, or the preloaded software that the computer runs at the start, which will get us up and running to the bare minimum. And not even that will let us start Tetris or anything that complex. First thing we really need to write is called a bootloader. A bootloader is the first thing we really need to write is called a bootloader. A bootloader is the first thing sort of in your control that's run on your computer as it starts up. It's basically like a preloader for any operating systems, and in our case, the first part of it lives on the first 512 bytes, or first sector of the hard disk. The first place the BIOS will look for things to run once it's done its thing and is trying to hand over control to an operating system. So to get started with our bootloader, I just threw some assembly down into a file that will basically just pause the system when it loaded and tried to build it. And tried again. And again. And tried again a few more times, and then I considered briefly giving up this project in its earliest stage. And finally, after a few hours of troubleshooting, I was finally able to get GCC to graciously accept my assembly file and have it spit out a binary. To get our emulator we'll be using though, to actually run this code, we need to create a disk image for its use as though we're a real hard disk. This is pretty simple, and with some basic shell commands we can write a couple hundred megabytes of zeros into a file and then use the same command to take our bootloader, exactly 512 bytes in size, and toss it right at the start. Oh, and we marked it as bootable as well by putting these special bytes, hex AA55 here, so the BIOS knows that the disk is bootable and it can run code off the first sector. So after that, prepare for magic. We can boot up QEMU for the first time with our hard disk, and it stops. Cool, right? Almost done with the video at this point. Next up is to see if we can actually do anything productive, which is to say literally anything at all. So we kind of need to do the bare metal hello world equivalent and write something to the screen. To do this, we'll rely on something called an interrupt, which is sort of a way of calling into code that, in this case, the BIOS is already set up for us before it even loads the bootloader. Almost like a prehistoric system call with a defined API and everything. And luckily for us, if we use interrupt hex 10 with register AH set to hex E, it will print whatever character we throw in AL to the screen. And since hello world is maybe a little overdone, I think, I christened our bootloader by getting it to print find API and everything. And luckily for us, if we use interrupt hex 10 with register AH set to hex E,
Комиссия за переводы – это мелочь, если вы платите ее всего лишь раз в месяц. А если раз в неделю? Или каждый день? Не платите комиссию.
9 months ago, I started developing a game called Monster Tower. Since then, I've taken this initial concept of just a monster catcher and turned it into Monster Tribe, which is a fully realized open-world RPG in a retro pixel art style. The series has sparked the interest of thousands of gamers and has taken me from a startup developer to a full-time entrepreneur and freelance artist from the skills and connections I've made along the way. If the project seems to be going along well, money's coming in, and I'm living my all-time dream, why am I telling you guys it was a mistake? Well, let's answer that today. The main problem that I see stems from an issue I like to call DGS, also known as Dream Game Syndrome. The idea is that in order to pop off on YouTube, you must create a perfectly envisioned game that you could consider to be your dream project. Unfortunately, this is not something that most of us should be doing. I really don't want anyone to take offense to this, as this is completely subjective and this is just my opinion. But when we think of creating a dream game, we think about the game that we want out there. What game we want to exist. As indie developers, our mission is not to create games because we want to play them. Our main mission is to create games because we enjoy the process of seeing something come to life and we want to be paid for our hard work in the process. 90% of the time, when you are making a long-term project of 1 to 2 years plus, by the end of the project, you probably won't be dying to play your game. Just think about it for a second. You've just spent half of the past 2 years of your life creating this project. You put in thousands of hours into behind-the-scenes development, playtesting for hours on end, bug fixing, marketing, and all of the other stresses that come with developing games. Creating your dream game might sound fun on paper, but in execution, it can really just dull out the idea and turn it into a job. Not fun. If you want my honest opinion, developing your dream game should not be what you envision to be the perfect game, but what is it that you love to do as a developer, and just focus on those aspects. To give you an example, I love creating complex movement mechanics that stack together and drawing up platformer tile sets. For me, my dream game to make would be something like Downwell or Celeste. However, growing up, I was obsessed with Pokemon and Zelda. So here we are, developing my dream game, even though I don't specifically enjoy half of the development process. Luckily for me, I am not alone on the project, so I don't have to handle too much of the application of UI and all of the math that comes with a complex turn-based RPG. But if you are not in a position to get other people on your development team, then this is definitely something you should be thinking about. Don't get me wrong, I love Monster Tribe, and overall it's been a great experience. But under different circumstances, life wouldn't be so pretty. If I didn't have the initial video catch people's attention to have thousands of you guys cheering me on today, if I didn't have awesome teammates to help me out with the workload, and if I wasn't creating outside revenue streams to keep me afloat during development, well, I think you get the idea. Existential crisis number 2. For those of you that are following with the development of the game though, I would love to show you guys some quick previews on some new updates we put together over the past couple weeks preparing for the Kickstarter campaign and trailer. We got fancy new biomes like the Burning Forest and the Snowy Mountains, a new UI and color scheme change in the works, which I personally believe will make the HUD look a lot cleaner, a new font to be used in the battle scene and for resource collection UI, updated game particles, and of course the caves that you will be exploring to find out about more information on the ruins and the mysterious ancient technologies powering the island. Since the start of development, the game has been a little bit of a pain in my ass, but when we start opening up the game to becoming an open world experience with free exploration and tackling the game in any order you'd like, it kind of comes with some problems. Not only do we have to adapt the story to make sense being played through in your own way, but in addition, we have to deal with our leveling system. Most RPGs will have some kind of leveling system, and our game is no exception to this rule. Having to adapt a unique leveling system to any and all creatures in our game, along with how enemies will level up throughout the story to keep a fun challenge, was a bit of a hassle to figure out, but it got a lot easier when we used today's sponsor. Sponsor. Machinations is a super intuitive game balancer where you can simulate pretty much any event you will have in your game, including our very own Monster Tribe leveling system. We got some help from the Machinations team to replicate our full system in the program, which was actually pretty easy to understand and expand once completed. If you guys are using a ton of external planning tools like spreadsheets, text documents, and diagrams to keep track of all of your information, then maybe it's time to pick up this game balancer and make your life a little bit easier. There are tons of already existing templates you can refer to, or you can get creative and create your own system for whatever you have planned. This personally saved us a ton of time in showing us real-time results on how our leveling will work, not only for one battle, but simulating thousands of encounters in a couple minutes. If you guys are familiar with my tutorials here on YouTube, then, well, they've got you covered. From extensive documentation provided on their site to fun and easy to pick up YouTube tutorials, I am confident you guys are in good hands when it comes to figuring out all this stuff. This company has been a blast to work with, and if you would like to help this channel out, make sure to click the first link in the description to try out Machinations for yourself. I promise you guys, if you take a little time to see how this program operates, you will be saving yourself in the long run. Invest in your skills and try Machinations for free today.
Хотите научиться делать картинки интерьера, которые не отличить от фото? Вот-вот я начну бесплатный онлайн-тренинг 3D Max
Today. So now that we've discussed why making an open world RPG might not be something you want to take on, we can get into how I overcame these issues, why I'm continuing the development of the game to the end, and what I plan to do in the future after development is complete and I'm looking to start something new. As I mentioned earlier, you guys are a huge reason as to why I'm continuing the project, and also the biggest factor in the actual success of the game. Growing an audience has been more than just a marketing scheme for me. I've met a lot of awesome people, share advice, and get me excited when I'm feeling in a bit of a rut. I've met a lot of awesome people, share advice, and get me excited when I'm feeling in a bit of a rut. With that being said, I would just like to address that I have been doing YouTube for a little longer than I'd like to admit, and building my skills as a game developer pretty slowly over the past 4 years. If you're creating games in your first or second year and haven't made a dime, don't get discouraged from the success of others. Keep trying new things and be ready for when the opportunities start to roll in. Monster Tribe is something I'm developing not only because it did well on YouTube, but also because this is a passion project first and foremost. I have always dreamed of making a monster collector game like the ones I grew up on, so for me it's not all about the output of what I managed to gain from this game. I'm making this game because I want to see the project come to life, and I genuinely enjoy creating games for the love and enjoyment of it. I was told a few months back by a highly successful influence that making this game is not the right call. The game will take too much time to make and won't hit the big shelves as the idea is not solidified enough to make a splash and compete with AAA titles. I completely agree with him. There are thousands of other games out there that deserve the spotlight a lot more than mine does. I also believe that the game won't be the next Stardew Valley or Shovel Knight. But the goal here is not to make the most successful game in the shortest amount of time possible. I'm successfully living out my life as a full-time business owner and freelancer, and I am loving the journey for what it is. Just remember this, there will always be optimization potential in anything you do, so as long as you are at a point of feeling secure, there is no need to continue to beat yourself down. Constantly learn from your failures and grow from your mistakes, but value those failures just as much as your successes. There's always an important lesson to be taken out of any endeavor, so figure out what went wrong and do better next time. As far as my journey goes, this game is just the beginning. I want to develop games for as long as I can walk on 2 feet, but I will try and approach future projects in a different way. I personally love games that you can sit down and play over a weekend. Those games that are incredibly addictive and impossible to put down, but are crafted in a few months or created for an amazing game jam experience. I want to test the bounds of what we are capable of creating and see what catches attention. After developing video games for years, I have a clear idea of what I like to do in development and what I want to stay away from, so expect to see more small experiences that are pushed to their absolute limits. To me, that is truly what an indie game should strive to do. I hope you guys enjoyed today's very strange form of devlog, and before you go, make sure to check out the Monster Tribe Kickstarter pre-launch page. We managed to secure the Projects We Love badge for the game, which means that we can potentially get on the front page of Kickstarter during our campaign. It's been a wild experience so far with more opportunities to follow, but I need all of your help to get this project to the biggest, most successful campaign possible. Going to our page and hitting that follow button will help us immensely when the Kickstarter actually releases. We need all of the backers we can get, so be sure to share the game with your friends. I hope you guys are just as excited as we are to see this project come to life, but I just wanted to say thank you guys for getting me to where I am today, being able to take the leap to becoming a full-time developer and content creator. And to be honest, this wouldn't really be possible without the support of you guys and my sponsors. So please make sure to go into the link in the description and try out Machinations for yourself. It's a really handy tool, and I wouldn't promote something that I don't believe in. Final note, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much, and yeah, I'll be streaming a lot during the Kickstarter campaign, so join the Discord server for more information on that. Also, I did mention that I would be doing a game jam once we hit 10K, and you know, we did that, so I'll be posting more updates on that over on my Twitter and my Discord. And last but not least, just guys, make sure to remember about the Kickstarter campaign that goes live April 15th. I'll see you guys soon, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. They've got you covered. From extensive documentation, from extensive documentation, from
Сотрудники для тех, кто развивает бизнес. Для тех, кому важна скорость найма. Для тех, кто ценит простоту и прозрачность подбора. Для тех, кому нужно больше рабочих рук. Для тех, кто строит будущее. Сотрудники для вас на ХХРУ.
For just $67, you can make as many videos as you want, and you never need to pick up a camera or use any fancy editing software. With Doodly, you drag, you drop, you tweak some settings, and boom, video done. It'll take you just a few minutes. So, let's hear from the Doodly creator, Brad, to see why Doodly is so easy to use and why you should grab this offer right now.
Hi, I'm Brad Callen, and in this video, I'm going to show you how anyone can quickly and easily create doodle videos, just like the one you're watching right now, using Doodly, our drag and drop doodle software that allows anyone, regardless of tech skills, to create highly engaging professional doodle videos in a matter of minutes. Because doodle videos are fun and engaging, they can get you more clicks, likes, shares, and most importantly sales than any other type of video, which is why Doodly is now the video tool of choice for over 150,000